Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is Officially Christie. This is the second story, I'm Not An Alcoholic, by an anonymous writer. In 1985, when I first walked through the doors of AA, it wasn't to stop drinking. I thought I could just find out how I could have a few drinks and not get into trouble. I had a lot to learn about alcoholism and about myself. I didn't relate much to the drinking stories because I was so much in denial. I wasn't a daily drinker. I didn't get drunk every time I drank. Besides, I never picked up a drink driving charge or went to rehab or in jail, lost my job and so on. How did I relate was emotionally. I had never been anywhere in my life before where people talked about the way I felt inside. I grew up with an inferiority complex. All the kids at school used to tease me, and as a teenager it got worse with dares and practical jokes. Up went the walls, and I became a loner, determined not to let anybody hurt me anymore. I hated rejection and always felt the need to be accepted and to please other people, to feel okay about myself. As a teenager, I had only had a taste of rum and coke. Obviously was not enough to have an effect, and I didn't like it, so I didn't bother drinking again. I was the bunny who ran other people in my mother's car. I knew they were using me, but I just wanted to be accepted and part of the group, even though I didn't feel like I was really fitted in. I loved music and dancing, but was always the wallflower to the last dance, when there were all the drunks and desperates just looking for someone to take home. Often I cried myself to sleep at night, sometimes wishing that I just wouldn't wake up. It wasn't until I was in my 20s on a working holiday in London that I'd had enough cheap Spanish wine at some friend's house to have an effect. I'll never forget that feeling that it gave me. I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. It allowed me to feel at ease with myself and other people, not self-conscious anymore and able to socialise. I wish I had discovered it as a teenager, as I would have had much better time. That's how it was for quite a few years. Have a few drinks, relax, socialise, have a good time. However, being an alcoholic, it didn't stay like that. I'll never forget my first blackout, drinking Racina in Greece on my way from London to Delhi by bus. It frightened the life out of me. Not being able to remember what had happened to me most of the night and waking up with a huge bruise on my arm the next morning. I was told that someone had bitten me. This made me decide that I wouldn't do that again. I didn't have another blackout for a long time. The inevitable happened, and by the time I got to AA, the blackouts were getting closer and closer together, and things were getting worse and worse. I thought I was becoming a schizophrenic. And now, married with 2 young children, once after making a fool of myself whilst out with friends on Chinese New Year, my husband told me as much. He said he loved me, but unless I did something about my drinking, he would leave me. At this point, I knew that he really meant it. I had done that sort of thing several times before. He wouldn't talk to me for a few days afterwards, and then when he did, he would always ask me why I got drunk. I didn't know the answer, as I never went out with any intention of getting drunk. I just wanted to relax, enjoy myself, and have a good time. His silence also gave me time to create an excuse of why I was late home. Where had I been, and what had I been doing? It was at this point that I rang AA and eventually got to my first meeting, full of denial, false pride and sick ego. I expected to walk into a room full of derelicts and got a shock of my life when I see a middle-aged woman sitting in the chair and a room full of ordinary-looking people. I was skeptical of everything. The word God in the 12 steps frightened me, as I thought the cliches were kind of corny. I was waiting for the crunch, but then I heard the preamble, no dues or fees. Fortunately, it was explained that it was a God of our own understanding, a higher power, whatever that may be. and that sat well with me. Some friendly people gave me phone numbers and I came back to meetings. Because of my denial, that was the only thing I did in the first couple of months that was right. I was trying on my own willpower not to drink, and of course that didn't work. My will could be so strong in other areas, and I couldn't understand why it didn't work with alcohol. Although I still hadn't found a lot of identification in the drinking stories, I did identify with the description of the alcoholic personality: emotionally immature, oversensitive, a loner, and so on. I remember as a teenager being afraid of growing up. After 2.5 months of only having 1 or 2 drinks when socialising or at a work function, we went out one night to a cabaret. At the end of the night, I was feeling really pleased with myself for only having a couple of drinks and not getting into any trouble. I thought I could control it, and that was as long as I was careful to only have a couple of drinks, then all would be okay. The reality was that for me as an alcoholic, the whole night I was obsessed with making a couple of drinks stretch out, but my denial would not let me see that. Whereas my husband, who's not an alcoholic, a couple of drinks was enough, and that was it, and he couldn't understand that about me. The next day we went to a barbecue, and before I knew it, I was in a blackout. My husband was well aware of the signs and took me home. It was coming out of a blackout that the realization of things that I had read in the AA Big Book hit me. It's not the amount that you drink that makes you an alcoholic, it's the effect that it has on you. I had just proved to myself that once I picked up a drink, I could not guarantee my behaviour. I started sobbing, and my husband came to see what was wrong. I said, "I'm an alcoholic, and I'm going to have to stop drinking." And then he, the man who told me that he would leave me if I did not do something about my drinking, said, "You're not an alcoholic. You're not as bad as so-and-so," a relative who was a chronic alcoholic. "You don't have to stop drinking, just don't drink so much." At this point, I knew that there was a lot of yets for me, and if I didn't stop drinking, it would get bad. Even though I had not lost anything material things yet, I had lost my self-respect, and that meant more to me than any material things. The next AA meeting I went to was on my first time at a women's meeting. Although I declined when they asked me to share early in the night, but thank God something happened, and near the end of the meeting I asked to share. I finally identified as an alcoholic. Up until then, I had not identified or spoken at a meeting. That was when God did for me what I was unable to do for myself. The desire to drink was taken away from me. I had previously scoffed to myself when I had heard that at the meetings. However, overnight my whole attitude changed, and it wasn't a conscious decision on my part. Now I could see the other side of the coin, no longer thinking that I wouldn't be able to relax and enjoy myself anymore, that I would be an old wowser. Now I could see that if I didn't drink anymore, I wouldn't have to be the problem in life that I had. Having to tell barefaced lies to my husband and all broken promises, even though I had not physically or verbally abused my children, it used to hurt them so much to see me drunk. I hate doing that to them, but the alcohol gave me no choice. The next few times I went out before I got to AA, I can remember my young daughter saying to me, "Mummy, please don't go and get drunk tonight." And it hurt so much, as I'd never went out with any intention. In hindsight, the next day, I realised that I'd finally taken the 5th step. Since then, I had tried to work the steps to the best of my ability, with all important but Step 1. I would not be sober today. Steps 4 and 5 have given me the new freedom promised in the Big Book. The freedom to be myself and to say no, as I had always been a people pleaser. It was because of people pleasing that I had done so many resentments that I wasn't aware of until I sat down to do my 4th step. Because of alcoholic personality, I was able to understand all the hurt from my childhood and the oversensitivity and emotional immaturity. The guilt and the shame of being a drunken female and mother no longer had hold over me, and I no longer had to be a doormat to my family because of it. All my life I had felt that I was searching for something to make me happy. I thought I needed the bright lights and the party atmosphere, and yet in those places crowded with people I often felt so alone. I tried all sorts of things to fill the void: travel, marriage, children, a career, and although I was enjoying them all, there was still an emptiness inside me. It wasn't until I was sitting in a meeting one day when I realized that what I had been searching for all along was right here in AA. I could see it in the older sober members, that inner peace. I've always had turmoil of emotional bottled up and pushed upside down inside. Today, I do experience peace and calm within most of the time. I learned from my sponsor that just because I had stopped drinking, life wasn't going to be a breeze, that I would still have challenges and tough times, but that was the program. The program would give me the tools to deal with these times. From experience, I have learned that these feelings will pass and that things do get better. One of the hardest things for me in early days was to ask for help, both from sponsors and a higher power. I always thought that to surrender was being weak, but I discovered it takes a lot of courage to admit defeat. After some months, I realized that I had a resentment against my understanding of God prior to AA, because He had made me and I didn't like the way I was. Initially, my faith was fake it till you make it, as I didn't think God would help me. I am just glad that I was willing to do what was suggested. The first time I was told to pray, I did it tongue-in-cheek. I felt awkward and embarrassed and didn't think that it would work. However, little things started to happen that proved to me that I was willing to put in the footwork. The results would come. Today, I do have a conscious contact with an unshakable faith in God of my own understanding. Service has been an important part of my recovery, being able to give back the little bit of what has been freely given to me. From washing dishes in the early days to being secretary of a group, then participating in Fellowship Central Service Office, local AA, district area and other meetings, serving at camp, groups, anniversaries, convention committees has been a great experience, and I've worked and become friends with a lot of different members from all over Australia. I've also felt right at home in meetings overseas, and non-English speaking meetings have proved to me that AA is certainly the language of the heart. The program has helped me in all areas of my life, home, family and work, and now I have a great relationship with my husband and adult children. I have 4 beautiful little grandchildren who have never seen me drink and hope they never will. Sure, I have had my tough times, but I have had God, the support of a loving family and other members who understand how I am feeling to get me through them. I am so glad that as much I didn't want to be an alcoholic at first, I just kept coming back to AA, and AA got me.